What if I told you that in 1871, a man decided to prove the world's most famous fairy tale was actually a crime scene? Heinrich Schliemann wasn't a professional archaeologist. He was a retired businessman with a chaotic mind and a copy of the Iliad gripped in his sweaty palms. Everyone told him Troy was a myth. They said Homer was a poet, not a cartographer. But Schliemann had this itch, a psychological compulsion to prove that the legends of his childhood were grounded in cold, hard stone. He arrived at a dusty hill in Turkey called Hisarlik, smelling of old leather and obsession. While the academic elite laughed over their tea in London, Schliemann was staring at a patch of dirt that felt wrong. He wasn't just looking for ruins. He was looking for a door to a past that shouldn't exist. He started digging, and then he felt the shovel hit something hard.
To understand why this mattered, you have to understand the mid-19th century psyche. The Enlightenment had turned everything into logic, but Schliemann was a man fueled by repressed trauma and a desperate need for validation. His journals, later analyzed by historians, reveal a man who lied about his past constantly, inventing stories of meeting American presidents just to feel significant. This wasn't a hunt for history, it was a hunt for self-worth. He hired hundreds of locals and began a brutal excavation, literally dynamite blasting through layers of earth. He was destroying history to find his history. The air was thick with the smell of scorched sulfur and dry limestone. He was digging through 9 different civilizations, one on top of the other, like a stack of pancakes made of human misery. Then the workers stopped. They had found a wall. But it wasn't just any wall. It was too big.
The wall was massive, built with a precision that defied the technology of the era he was searching for. Schliemann claimed he saw a flicker of gold through a crack in the masonry. This is where the story gets dark. He dismissed his workers, claiming it was his birthday, just so he could be alone with the dirt. He and his young wife, Sophia, began digging with their bare hands in the shadows of the trench. Imagine the silence of the Turkish plains, broken only by the sound of fingernails scraping against 3,000-year-old rock. They pulled out a copper shield, then a cauldron, and finally a chest filled with over 8,000 pieces of gold jewelry. He called it Priam's treasure. He had opened a door to the Bronze Age, but in his excitement, he had accidentally smashed through the actual layer of Troy he was looking for. He found a door, but he broke it.
The psychological weight of this discovery changed him. He started dressing his wife in the ancient jewelry, taking photos that would shock the world. Sophia looked like a ghost draped in the spoils of a dead queen. But there was a problem that the history books often gloss over. Schliemann's obsession with being the discoverer led him to ignore the stratigraphic evidence. He had blasted through the real Troy, the one from the songs, to find an even older, more primitive city. He was standing in a room that shouldn't have been there because he had literally forged a path through time with explosives. His letters from this period show a man descending into a strange form of madness. He began to believe he was the reincarnation of a Greek hero, losing touch with the reality of the 1870s. The gold wasn't enough. He needed the myth to be real. But then came the realization that haunted his final years. Modern analysis of the treasure proved it was 1,000 years older than the Trojan War. He hadn't found the door to the Iliad. He had found a door to a forgotten civilization that had no name and no songs. The high-energy triumph of the discovery curdled into a quiet academic horror. He had spent his life chasing a specific ghost, only to realize he had unearthed a different, more terrifying one. The psychological blow was devastating. He had the gold, but he didn't have the truth. He started seeing Troy everywhere, even in his own home, lining his walls with symbols he didn't understand. He became a man trapped between two worlds, the reality of the dirt and the fiction of his own mind. He was the first man to see the Bronze Age, but he couldn't actually see it.
The air in the trenches was never just dust. It was the pulverized remains of people who had been forgotten for millennia. Schliemann didn't care about the people, only the proof. He wanted to hold the physical manifestation of a poem. He spent his fortune building a mansion in Athens he called the Palace of Troy, where he forced his servants to speak only ancient Greek. He was trying to live inside the door he had opened, but the hinges were rusted shut. Scholars now point to his work as the birth of modern archaeology, but they also call it its greatest tragedy. He taught us how to find the past, but he also taught us how easy it is to destroy it in the name of ego. Every time we dig now, we carry the ghost of his shovel, wondering if we are finding the truth or just inventing a new lie.
Schliemann died on a street corner in Naples, alone, while people walked past him thinking he was a beggar. He had the keys to the ancient world in his pocket, but he couldn't even explain who he was to the police. He opened a door that shouldn't have existed, the door to our deep prehistoric past, but he did it with such violence that he blurred the lines between fact and hallucination forever. We still use his maps, but we do so with a shudder. He showed us that the things we think are myths might just be memories we've forgotten how to read. The door remains open, but the hallway behind it is much darker than he ever promised. Sometimes when you find what you're looking for, you realize you should have left the shovel in the shed and kept the story in the book. The gold is still there, but the man who found it is lost.